Good evening. Let's call this meeting of the County Board to order. It's Tuesday, November 21st, 2017. The time is 6:30. Roll call, please.
Rosales, Store, Summers, Tinsley,
Present.
Anderson, Clemens, Coert, Cruz, Esri,
Here.
excuse me, Furtado, Goss,
Here.
Harper, Hartke,
Here.
King, Marsh,
Here.
McGuire, Michaels, Mitchell, Patterson,
Here.
Petrie,
Present.
Rector, Weibel.
We have a quorum. Tonight's prayer is a Thanksgiving prayer by Ralph Waldo Emerson. For each new morning with its light, for rest and shelter of the night, for health and food, for love and friends, for everything that goodness sends. Amen. Would the clerk please read the notice of the meeting?
Notice is hereby given that a regular meeting of the County Board, Champaign County, Illinois will convene on November 21st, 2017 at 6:30 p.m. in the Lyle Shields Meeting Room, Brookings Administrative Center, 1776 East Washington Street, Urbana, Illinois, in said county for the purpose of allowing and ordering payments of claims against the county, receiving and acting upon reports of committees, and such other matters as may be brought before said meeting, which said meeting shall continue in session from day to day until the completion of said business.
Thank you. Seek approval of the agenda and any addenda. Moved by Mr. Mitchell. Second by Ms. Petrie. Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Date and times of our next regular meetings. The facilities meeting is on Tuesday, December 5th at 6:30. ELUC on the 7th at 6:30. Highway's been canceled. There's no highway meeting next month. The Committee of the Whole for Justice, Social Services, Policy, Personnel Departments, and Finance meets on the 12th at 6:30. And the regular County Board meeting is on December 19th at 6:30. Public participation. You have 5 minutes each. Up to 5 minutes. Mr. Michael Van Pelt.
Hello, Board. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. My name is Michael Van Pelt, and I live at 2424 East Green Street in Urbana. I'm here asking for your help in helping getting our neighborhood cleaned up. I did a little research, found the ordinance. I believe the rules are on the books to get done what we want done. We have a great community participation. I hope you've seen our article that was in November 12th, made to the front page of the News Gazette, trying to get our neighborhood cleaned up, to call to attention. There's 4 properties that are the worst, or I believe needs the most attendance. 2424 Illinois Street has a school bus and a yard full of junk. It's been there for over 5 years. I believe the ordinance covers that, and junk and debris, that should be cleaned up. The second property is at 2423 Elm Street. Trash, junk cars, trailers. The third property is at 206 Dodson. Abandoned trucks, grown-up weeds. The other property is at 2415 Nevada. Trash, weeds, people dumping. And then the last property is at number 5 California Court. We have junk car, junk truck, and trash all out through the yard. I'm asking for some help and some guidance from this board, what we can do to get these properties cleaned up And why has it taken this long? If the rules are on the books, why isn't it being enforced? I'd like to know what notices of violations have been filed. Has the state attorney office, have we filed any complaints or taken any action on these properties? And what we have to do to get these properties cleaned up, to make our neighborhood a proud place that we can live and we can raise children. Thank you very much.
Dottie Vera Weiss.
Good evening, and thanks again for the chance to speak and for the time that you spend working on activities for the county. I think it was last month that I said thank you for spending 2 or 3 or even 4 meetings a month here. I was out of town, but I understand that last week's meeting probably counted as 2 or 3 just by itself. So thank you for that. I also understand that the downtown jail is not going to be closed at this time after all. And even though I think that there would be basic benefits of consolidating the 2 jails, I realize that there's also gives us an opportunity to get some other stuff done and be ready to plan a more logical renovation of the satellite jail when things can be done. The county has had 2 different task forces, the Community Justice Task Force and the Racial Justice Task Force, that made recommendations for changes. Also, you had the consultant from ILPP who made a lot of recommendations for changes. And only a few of those have been followed so far. I really hope that you can go ahead and find a way to actually encourage. The county board might not be the ones to actually do it, but to encourage it, help it to happen, to have some of the interagency, intergovernmental entities that can move these forward. Have things like a behavioral health coordinating council, which I understand there is some work on it, and the public health I-Plan, 3-year I-Plan is going to put some major emphasis on getting a behavioral health center built, and we're still waiting to know what the details are going to be, but that will probably involve that. Also, getting pretrial services implemented here, and pretrial services include identifying who's in jail that really doesn't need to be there, and after all, if they haven't been convicted, we say people are innocent until proven guilty, unless there's a compelling need that can't be met by any other measure for public safety or to assure that people show up in court. And I am going to try to help to arrange for some more information to be provided, because I know there's a lot of skepticism about that. But we have 85 to 90% of the people in our jails have not been convicted, and they are legally innocent until proven guilty. So that's a higher ratio than most places. That's one of the areas that we should be making a difference. So some of the really important things are doing things like pretrial services, getting a mental health center going for diversion and alternatives, moving to more restorative justice practices, and also working on the reentry population and helping to provide housing for people coming back into the community, I think is one of the things. Again, it may not be this board's primary purpose, but having encouragement from the county board for this type of activity, encouragement for the housing authority and for the different cities to come together, I think is a very appropriate job for the board. So I hope that you'll take that into account. I know that you have a lot of challenges. Things have been kicked down the road for so long because people didn't make the financial and time investment in getting some processes in place. And I think that this is a good opportunity, good time to really make some of those changes. Thank you very much.
Nala for Shambayati.
Thank you and good evening. Basically, I'm not gonna bring up any new issues since it seems that all the basics have been talked about over the years, not months, over the years, at least since 2013. And it's much surprising to me that there are still some doubts as there is such a thing as pre-trial reforms that have been in place in other jurisdictions, other counties, other states, and they have been very successful in reducing the jail population. And I truly believe that if we show the resolve here in this county to commit ourselves not to the really comprehensive pretrial reforms, but to some modest reforms that do not require much financial investment and would produce results very quickly. This is something that we can all do. And there is like a 16-page report by Pretrial Justice Institute that came out like a few weeks ago, and everyone is so enthusiastic about it because in a very short space, it actually gives information about every single pretrial reform that has been enacted around the country. And then it has links to all of those. So I would like, I know some of you may not be interested, but I would like to send that, the link to that report to all of you so that you can see that it's not just a, in our imagination, basically, those of us who are committed to social justice in this community. And I understand that the county board have, in many occasions, sympathized with the goals of pretrial reform, but has also indicated that they do not hold any power in order to implement those reforms, which is well taken and is well understood. But the county board has something that gives it some leverage, and that's the power of the purse. People may not want to use that, but even if you don't use it, if you behave the way that someone or some agencies who have the power of the purse, then other agencies would come around. And you have the power and you have the responsibility to bring around a table all the criminal justice authorities, along with some other agencies that may have some stake in making reforms. And this has happened all over the country, that when there is conflict or rivalry among the various actors in the criminal justice system, no pretrial reform or any kind of reform has taken place because no one wants to initiate any reform and no one wants to cooperate with the others. And pretrial reforms require a collective attempt. So everyone works with the other agents and then they bring about change. So in those instances, there are other authorities that have stepped in, and they have brought others to the table, whether they wanted it or not, but they had been brought together to the table. So that is what I really would like to urge the county board members to do. And we can start with a very simple thing that is, excuse me, that is calling people when their trial is up. remind them that they have a trial coming up. Because people have so many problems that they may not be remembering it, or they may not have access to transportation, for example.
Wrap it up, please.
So, yes. So this is just one example of reforms that can be enacted without having to spend thousands or millions of dollars. So I would really encourage everyone to take this responsibility seriously and invest in our community and in our youth. Thank you so much.
Yvonne Sadler? No, Yvonne Sadler. Nope, sorry. We had the same problem last meeting, so.
I didn't do good last week with the speaker. Anyway, what Mike stated, I'm Yvonne Sadler. I live at 2410 East Illinois, Urbana. I live out in Scottswood Addition, as all of you well know. We have many problems. With what Mike stated is just minimum. Weekly, more problem arises. You can just walk around. The one thing I was curious about is in our tax, why does renters get homeowner occupied tax break? You know, the landlords and such. That was supposed to just be for us, and that's thousands and thousands of dollars you're losing. Habitat, I talked to them this week, and they said they are more than willing to help us out with the burnout houses. They work with Champaign and Urbana and have been reimbursed fully, so it did not cost Champaign or Urbana any money, but there is the cost up front, of course. And I emailed the zoning committee, the name of the one that is running that. And I talked to Sheriff's Department too, also about the cars on the street that either don't have any license plates or don't have updated stickers. And I am pleased to hear that they're working with you, and there will be a new ordinance out soon, hopefully, that will take care of that problem. And I've been promised that won't be 5 years. And our board members, it would be nice when we contact the one representing us out in Scottswood, when we email them with our problems and send pictures and everything, if they would acknowledge that they received it. And that was kind of disappointing. And he knows who he is. And thank you. And please keep us in mind, because we're going to be back.
Alexa Bryn?
Hello, everyone. My name is Alexa, and as some of you may remember, my mother and I spoke to you all last week to advocate for the county board to fund community-based mental health and substance abuse services with money from the public safety sales tax. This week, my mother and I emailed some of you to provide you with further information as to why Champaign County needs these services. Within the past week, I went to the Champaign-Urbana Health Department to get trained in administering Narcan and learn more about harm reduction practices. Last week, we all heard about the great resources First Followers has been providing to formerly incarcerated people in our community. Now, my question to you all is, what are you as county board members actually doing to provide for those who have been asking for help in our community? Because from the looks of it, it seems like the buck keeps getting passed to activists and local advocates to provide for our community. You created a crisis response planning committee filled with a majority of politicians, service providers, and law enforcement. Of the 17 people on that committee, 3 are not a part of the mentioned demographics. Those 3 people consist of 2 people from NAMI and 1 citizen representative. Why is it this community is filled with people who do not represent the affected groups? Formerly incarcerated people, recovering addicts, and people with mental health issues are competent enough to give commentary on policy that affects us. When you have a board filled with a majority of people who have never been on the receiving end of these policies, you are doomed to create the problems you are trying to prevent in the first place. And these are going to cycle over and over again because our voices are being silenced. You can collect as much data and do as many interviews on mental health in the jail as you want, but unless that committee physically represents the people affected, policy suggestions that come from them will inherently benefit the service providers and the sheriff. I advise you to follow the recommendations of the Racial Justice Task Force and invest in pretrial services, reentry services, and also mental health services. We all need to work together for the health and wellness of our community, and the best way to do that is by listening to those most affected by these policies. So, as I mentioned, the Crisis Response Planning Committee has majority law enforcement, several people that say that they're from U of I, but they're actually police officers, and then everyone else is like politicians, the sheriff, and stuff like that. So genuinely, I'm curious, who thought that it was a good idea to not have people that are actually affected by addiction and by mental health problems and formerly incarcerated people? Because how does that benefit me? How does that benefit my friends who have been incarcerated? You know, we talk about these problems of recidivism, and we talk about these problems of people not having housing, and then this committee was created to fix these problems when it's filled with the people who are creating these problems in the first place. So I really hope that you reconsider some of the recommendations from the Crisis Response Planning Committee, and I really hope that you listen to the Racial Justice Task Force, because I found that their recommendations really represented the community much better. Anyway, thank you all.
Next is Albert Stabler.
Hi. Hi, my name is Albert Stabler. I work with build programs, not jails. I've also had a couple editorial pieces in Smile Politely this fall during this kind of pre-budget season. One was called "If the Sheriff Builds It, He Will Fill It," and the other one is called "The Jail Plan That Just Won't Die." So I recommend my writing, of course, and that kind of covers some of the stuff that I want to just reiterate to you in regard to the recommendations of the Crisis Response Planning Committee, which is a detailed, thorough, and you know, in many ways, I think, you know, useful report. The things that I, and I think several people I work with, have concerns about are the idea that mental illness can be, and substance abuse can be best treated within a jail through stigmatizing people with incarceration. The issue of creating solitary confinement cells, which is often used as a form of you know, security enhancement, but also has been found by the UN to be a form of torture. And there's also the $261,000 in the budget that's will probably, hopefully, be spent, according to Mr. Snyder, on actually doing ADA compliance work on the downtown jail, but it's still earmarked to do jail construction, and so I want to just make sure that everyone who's voting on this budget is aware of that. Also in this budget, we can see the Youth Assessment Center being cut. We can see reentry services being cut or being put on, you know, kind of life support. I want to just remind people how expensive it is to run a jail, how expensive all the reports have been, all the consulting reports have been for constructing jail cells. It's around $30,000 a year to house someone in a IDOC prison. I think it's around $20,000 per person, and of course, even though the people change out, you can do the math. When we're averaging, you know, 170 folks in the jail or so. per day. Things to also to think about, nursing home has been seen as a source of cash, I know, for a lot of the stuff the county wants to do. I've been led to believe that Mr. Snyder sees that, and others have made the debt that the nursing home is associated with part of the nursing home's budget and not part of the general operating budget, to make it seem as if the nursing home itself is losing money when it's a public service. That concerns me. And it seems in many ways that what the county board does, as Alexa was pointing out, is not showing leadership, passing the buck in saying that we don't have the power as a county board, we don't have jurisdiction with the level of financial control that you all exercise, and your role as the leadership at the county level, where most of these public services are funded and originate. I think you can be doing quite a bit to bring together cities and service providers to do things that we at Build Programs Not Jails are recommending, things like getting a mental health and substance abuse community-based center off the ground, creating more options for housing for homeless people, enhancing reentry services, following the recommendations of the Racial Justice Task Force. These are all things that we really hope that you all, if not in this budget cycle, will take seriously, and not shrug off as something that is a marginal concern, when the people who are marginalized are the people who would benefit from these public services being attended to. Thank you.
Is there further public participation? See none, we'll close that. Moving on to the consent agenda. Are there any items that board members wish to take off the consent agenda? See none, could I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Moved by Mr. Esri, second by Mr. Anderson. Yes. Roll. There's always a roll call, has to be. Oh, you did move it, right? Okay. All right, been moved in second. Roll call, please.
Storr? Yes. Summers? Yes. Tinsley?
Yes.
Anderson? Yes. Clemens? Yes. Court? Yes. Cruz? Yes. Esri? Yes. Furtado? Goss?
Yes.
Harper?
Yes.
Hartke?
Yes.
King? Yes. Marsh?
Yes.
McGuire? Yes. Michaels? Yes. Mitchell? Yes. Patterson? Yes. Petrie?
Yes.
Rector? Yes. Weibel?
Yes, motion carries. Next is communications from the board. Are there any communications from the board? Ms. Michaels? Make sure you use the microphone. Take it with you. Take it with you.
You can hear me a half mile away.
Yeah, but it's for the viewing audience.
For the audience. I want to stand up because we deserve to give Mr. Welch a big round of applause. This is his last meeting, I believe. Through the end of December, we have a couple people leaving, and we just wanted to say thank you very, very much for all of your years of service, all of your tireless hours put in, talking to each and every one of us, trying to get us to understand finances and the Treasury Department within our county. And I just couldn't be more prouder to be excited about you also having a retirement that you can enjoy. So to you and your wife and your family, we thank you deeply.
Any other communications from the board? Mr. Harper, you have your microphone on. I don't know if you noticed that. Thank you. I have a couple communications. First of all, beginning of December, it's the beginning of our state's 200th birthday celebration. And we've been given a flag, as have all counties. And Rick, would you be my stagehand, please? And unfold that and hold that up, please. There you go. This is the official bicentennial flag. I would point out that a member of the staff who may or may not be here pointed out that Illinois is blue. Illinois looks good in blue, doesn't it? Anyway, we also got a letter from the governor with us. I'm just going to read one paragraph from that letter. The bicentennial is a once-in-a-lifetime invitation to fall in love with Illinois all over again. It is an opportunity to celebrate all that has been great in our first 200 years and lay the foundation for 200 more years of growth and prosperity. Illinois is home, and the bicentennial gives us a chance to reflect on what makes it great and how we can continue to make it great for our children and grandchildren. And next Friday, on December 1st, we will have a flag raising ceremony at approximately 3 o'clock. We'll have a press release sent out early next week, in which we will have this flag flying from one of the poles in front of the courthouse. We do have an issue that not all the flag poles were designed to carry an extra flag, but we're working on that issue. It will be up there somehow next Friday. All right. Thank you, Rick. And I have just one other item. Ms. Petrie, you have a question? Okay. During the last council meeting and during, I think, the discussion on the contract for the interim administrator, someone from the board mentioned that you're being dumped on by one of the motions that was on the agenda. I want to point out that at the beginning of every month, there's a meeting, as I call them, pre-meeting meetings, where the chair and the vice chair meet, supposed to meet, so they can put together the agenda. One of the reasons we have this is that so that the chair or the vice chair can go back to their respective caucuses and inform the caucus of what's going on. Now, we haven't had any for Justice Social Services, but all the other meetings we have. Now, attendance at those meetings has been abysmal. Would you agree, Rick? So therefore, if you feel you're not getting, you feel being dumped on by some of these motions, well, that's because somebody's not doing their job. It's not my fault. I'm just trying to run things through the county board as they come up. So if you want to be more informed, have that person attend those meetings. All right? Ms. Petrie.
I wasn't going to do this, but since we're in a mode of thanking people and it is Thanksgiving just around the corner, I do want to acknowledge two very important ladies in our community that I happened to cross paths with unexpectedly, same place. And one is Bernadine Stake. Bernadine Stake was important for the city of Urbana, both as a city council member and a planning commission member for many, many years. And the second person is Mary Blair. Mary never had an elected office. Her importance is her involvement in the League of Women Voters, and she moved many important issues within our community under the procedures of the League of Women Voters. So both ladies are up in their years, but they contribute a lot to our community, and I think they need to be acknowledged every now and then.
Thank you, Ms. Petrie. Any further communications from board members? Okay, let's go on to the next item, the Visit Champaign County presentation. Jane?
Good evening. Thank you for a few minutes to talk about how Visit Champaign County drives economic growth to this area. For any new county board members, we are the certified destination management organization for the greater Champaign County area, and that also includes Monticello, Allerton, and Arthur as regional partners. We focus on sales, marketing, and enhancing our destination to bring in visitors for meetings and conferences, sports, international, and leisure. To highlight our recent performance, you have the fiscal year 17 annual report. You also have the new visitor's guide and your own copy of Midwest Living magazine. Other than being reading material as you're talking about other agenda items, I brought that one for a reason because on page 62, it talks about our area, which was named the greatest Midwest food town. Woohoo. That is a subscription of 3 million readers, so just the idea of us being a food destination for that magazine is pretty awesome. I do want to show you our most recent performance recap video entitled Welcome to Champaign County. It was made during National Travel and Tourism Week under the national theme Faces of Travel, and it was shown at our Toast to Tourism annual meeting.
Welcome to Champaign County.
Welcome to Cinema Gallery.
Hi, welcome to Champaign.
مرحبا بكم في مدينة شامبين أوربانا.
Welcome to Allerton, where we are truly outside of ordinary.
Welcome to Champaign County.
Hi, welcome to Champaign County.
This is Red's Rye.
Is it one of the Blind Pig groups?
Welcome to the William M. Starkle Planetarium at Parkland College.
Welcome to Champaign County and Hardy's Reindeer Ranch.
Hey, welcome to Monticello.
Welcome to Champaign County.
Welcome to Champaign County.
Welcome to Champaign County.
Welcome to Japan House.
The video in the annual report highlights over $380 million collectively with our regional partners in visitor spending and 2,990 tourism-related jobs in the greater Champaign County area this past year. These numbers come directly from the U.S. Travel Association and show that tourism is big business in this community. For every $1 invested in tourism, $7 is returned to the economy. So here are 5 highlights from this last fiscal year. 1, brought in the National Hot Rod Power Tour in June, welcoming over 3,500 hot rodders, generating over $1.5 million in economic impact on one stop during their 7-day, 7-city national tour. 2, we created new welcome centers at the U of I Airport and at Illinois Terminal. We rebranded the Welcome Center at Marketplace Mall. We moved into our new office in downtown Champaign, and we added a mobile visitor center. 3, we expanded use of video in our branding efforts, which, for example, we shot live Facebook video from the Half Century of Progress show, and it resulted in over 2.4 thousand views on that video alone. 4, we booked 66 future groups in our sports, meetings, and group tour markets, which is more than one group per week. Our efforts focus on new tourism growth markets and staff coordinating a variety of sales blitzes and participating in trade shows such as the African American Travel Conference, the Active America Travel China Summit, Diversity Marketplace, IPW, and National Association of Sports Commissions. A number of international groups came during the Half Century of Progress show and the Farm Progress show. 150 people from John Deere, Argentina stayed and toured the area and ate and stayed at all the hotels. Another group of Brazilian farmers explored the area, including the supercomputer, dinner at Willow Creek Farm, and a tour of the Institute of Genomic Biology. In September, a Swiss group visited Bain Family Meats, visited with the College of Aces and Curtis Orchard. This is just a few examples of what a strong market we are for our rich, diverse community. And 5, I already mentioned, we are recognized as the greatest Midwest living food town. This the publishing team came on September 9th, and we did pop-up activation sites at Urbana's Market at the Square, Blind Pig Brewery, and Grange Grove. There will be a recap of that visit in the January-February issue of Midwest Living. Also with food, we hosted the first ever Champaign County Area Restaurant Week in early 2017, after everybody's done with their New Year's resolutions, and we already plan to make it bigger and better in early 2018. Our overall goal is to build stronger brand equity, increase visitor traffic, and grow area business. The travel industry has created jobs at a faster rate than any other industry, and 1 of every 9 jobs in the U.S. depends on travel and tourism. We continue to guide our destination management efforts through our Destination 2020 strategic plan. The key priorities are that we'll choreograph a strategic destination management framework, we'll expand our reputation for excellence and credibility, we'll drive business in our target visitor markets, and we'll build a sustainable funding model. Moving forward, specific goals in this fiscal year include expanding the new regional film office, further driving business during the weekdays. We're really good at the weekends. We have to drive business during the weekdays, including a bid on a national conference for electricians, I'll tell you about that one, that would greatly impact our area. Also build the Visit Champaign County Foundation as we work toward a locally funded business model, more use of social media and video for user content management, and build a hospitality network that strengthens our local cohesive support among hotels, retail, restaurants, vendors, and attractions, which we've also already hosted 2 successful tourism summits. Events-wise, we've hosted the Illinois State Women's Bowling Tournament, we hosted the American Cornhole Organization Midwest Major, and if you're not familiar with cornhole, better known as bags, and that is a national sport, and they do play for cash prizes. And tomorrow, we're going to announce a new major sport event in 2018 that will bring in over 300 participants. It's an off year for hosting IHSA state football finals this weekend, but we're already working on the return of the IHSA State Wrestling Championships in February, the Christie Clinic Illinois Marathon in April, among other sport events that fill our hotel rooms, our restaurants, and our attractions. Our success as a destination management organization comes from our strategic partners, our regional marketing partners, our hotel partners, and our new foundation partners, which are all listed in your publications. Our success also comes from a hardworking team who produce results. So a shout out to Terry Reefsteck on the marketing team, who does the majority of our branding in-house. All of that design is done in-house. Leah Longville and Ryan Reed on the sales and events team, and Jen Petticourt and Brooke Mayer on the admin team. Thank you to the Champaign County Board for your gold partnership to date. You need to know that your $15,000 investment that you've given us is actually $30,000 because we match it through a state tourism grant. So any proposed cut would sincerely impact our economic development efforts, and it would eliminate your Visit Champaign County board member position. We're here to support business, especially locally owned, and we represent all areas of the county and beyond to champion this area as a memorable, authentic, outside of ordinary destination. I'm happy to answer any questions or if you have any comments. Thank you.
Mr. Storr.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Luce. I looked at your publication, the Greater Champaign County Area, and I was looking at the Getting Around section, and I noticed that taxi cabs and taxi cab companies weren't listed, and I wondered why that was.
There's too many to list, and I think that part of it, we've had them online, but in print we found because that there's, I believe, 50 or more taxi, because so many of them are independently owned, that we were not able to manage the taxi companies.
Follow up, but you list you list Uber and Lyft.
Right.
Isn't that giving them a competitive advantage over some of the taxi cab companies that pay taxes and live here?
We just don't list them in the print materials. We've got them all listed online with that it is an option for getting around town. If what I think I'm hearing you say is I just need to list that there's taxis in there, I'm happy to be able to do that. I just wouldn't list all the different names of them.
Oh, I wish that you could kind of accommodate some of the taxi cabs, or at least acknowledge that, maybe that there might be a place where people could go to get a taxi cab, because they point out, at least to me, that they have to go through a certain amount of vetting and police identification and insurance and so forth, which some of the other places listed here do not.
Yeah, we absolutely do promote them. In fact, we have a handful of them that come into our office that we provide visitors guides, and they act as brand ambassadors, as well as out at the airport when they pick up passengers out there. So we do promote them. So.
I'd sure like to see something in your publication,
okay.
Please.
Thank you. Got it.
Other questions? Ms. Petrie.
Just a clarification, your basically last statement that if the county decreased the amount of support for the Visitors Bureau, that the county wouldn't be represented anymore on that board, or did I misunderstand you?
That is correct. It's a designated board position currently now with the investment that you have. Our board is made up of funding partners with a few at-large partners that are from attractions, but all of the funding partners that have representation on the board are at a minimal level.
So what is the minimum level?
10,000. Mm-hmm.
Rick, you have a question?
Yeah, I just have a point of clarification. We didn't talk a lot during the budget process, I think, about this particular line item. But when we developed the budget and we started doing the original, when we're trying to close the $837,000 budget deficit, I had proposed a reduction in the fee from $15,000 to $10,000 for Visit Champaign County, so that the county would maintain its gold membership. The current level of investment that we have consumes a pretty large portion of the lodging revenues that we receive through taxes. And I thought that looking at some of the other entities that are also gold members and who receive many more dollars than we do in return for visiting activities, made sense to me that maybe we consider reducing that investment as part of our overall reductions. I understand that this will have an impact for Visit Champaign County because of the matching dollar impact. So a $5,000 reduction is a $10,000 reduction for them budget-wise. But I think that there's only one eligible property in the county that we receive lodger's tax on. Tammy, is that right? Do you remember? Yep. So.
Further questions? Mr. Mitchell.
I just want to, Jane does an outstanding job. She works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, never takes any time off.
Except last week. I know.
Well, she does deserve a little bit of time off, but she does work remotely. But I just want everybody to know that it's her leadership that really has put Champaign County on the map. And we are stakeholders, and I would hope that we can continue to be a stakeholder because, people that come to our communities, if they like it here, they may want to live here, and that helps us all. So if I could only be on the front line all the time, but Jane, thank you for all your hard work.
And Max, thank you for being such a good board member and representing the county. Very much so. Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. King.
Thank you again, Ms. Jane. Great numbers. I just always, the first question, I like the jobs and the payroll connection there. I wonder if you could speak to maybe the diversity of the tourism and travel workforce and sort of what that looks like. I don't know if you have those numbers, but just looking at the amount of jobs that are created because of the industry, could you speak to maybe the diversity of that particular industry?
I don't have it broken down per area, but what we're referring to would be anything related to hotels, restaurants, attractions, and also service industry. That if you look at like a hotel and the number of towels that they go through, who's the company that cleans those towels? So it's the direct providers, and it's also the indirect providers that provide those service to that. And we hear time and time again of stories of people who said, you know, I'm in the catering business, and if it wasn't for this event that comes to town or these events that come to town, I wouldn't be able to keep my business going. And that's why for us it's so important for our locally owned businesses, especially our locally owned restaurants that do work 24/7 to keep those restaurants going. Our residents can't keep those up, so we have to bring in visitor traffic to support those, and we're very happy to be able to do that. And you know, doing the restaurant week or just featuring people day in and day out on blogs and other types of things that we can help tell their story. And we've just got some amazing people here that put their life on the line for their business. So that's who we're referring to, are those folks.
Cool. And just as a follow-up, is there a particular, I guess, segment of the travel and tourism industry that we don't have in the county that you get requests for, that, you know, in terms of business owners that might be viewing this tonight live or someday in the future? Could you speak to maybe that segment that's missing or that you find folks are interested in?
I would say music is one. Music venues that are all types of music is probably one that we would hear. And we have a terrific arts and cultural scene, but if there were one that we would talk about bringing in groups and they want to make sure that they're going to be entertained while they're here, whether they're here for a family reunion or for a conference, that's probably the first one. And then the biggest one that we aren't able to go after larger groups is not having a big enough conference center. And I have run a variety of reports on lost business because of not having the amount of space all in one area, and we lose out to just our neighbors, not to mention names, but down the road about 45 minutes. It's also Twin Cities has a convention center that just they outbid us on conference space, and we have so many better amenities outside of that. So if we had that center with the additional amenities we have, having just in downtown Champaign alone, more than 40 now locally owned, you know, restaurants and bars and things for people to go to, we would do wonders with that. So there's my plug for the big conference center.
Max, go ahead.
Just real quick, if you could highlight that story about the electricians, I think that was pretty interesting. That how that all came about, and
the one that we're bidding on.
Yeah,
okay.
and how they like us, but how it just came to pass.
We have the opportunity, and I'm a little bit hesitant because of my good friend Mr. Kasich over there, who's writing stories for the media. We're actively pursuing a national conference that would bring in over 2,000 attendees, and it's not something that's been done here of that magnitude. And when you look at the types of facilities we have, one example is the trade show. And immediately your first response would be, well, we just renovated the State Farm Center. It's air conditioned, but it's not a trade show space. The floor itself is not big enough to be able to accommodate all of the vendors that you would want to have in a trade show. We're working with them, though, and hoping to be able to be creative and even maybe use the suites, since this is in late summer, to kind of be additional space. So we're very creative with our resources and how we do things. And on kind of a side note, the cornhole that we did last year, I couldn't find a venue to host that, and we ended up using one of the Atkins Group warehouse at out by the mall. Just got rented Yes. And that was the most creative use of space, and I stood in there and said, I'm using a warehouse to do a large event. This is crazy, but it worked out, and we were able to do it, and they loved it, and they came back, and this past year we used the tennis center. And if you ever wanted to know, the proper things between the two for throwing bags is the width of a tennis court, so we were able to line it up pretty easily. So anyway, but to Max's point, it's held in another Big Ten city to the north of us. Colors maybe blue and gold, we'll leave it at that. And we're trying very hard to bring it here, and the cooperation of everybody here to bring it is on a level that is very, very good, but it's gonna take so much effort to be able to do that, and we're creative with the resources we have to do it. Does that sound pretty good, Max?
Okay, any other questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have a presentation on the Youth Assessment Center.
Good evening. Thank you, Chairman Weibel and members of the Champaign County Board for the opportunity to provide testimony on our department's work at the Youth Assessment Center. My name is Delitso Sulamoyo, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Regional Planning Commission. This evening, I have with me Lisa Benson, who is our Director of Community Services, and Jonathan Westfield, who is the Coordinator of the Youth Assessment Center. What we'll do this evening is to provide you with the purpose of the Youth Assessment Center, share with you some measurable outcomes, and share with you also a story that hopefully can bring to life some of the data that we're going to share with you tonight. So the Youth Assessment Center staff, they screen at-risk juveniles and links them with, and their families, with the community's support and restorative services. Law enforcement personnel typically make referrals to the Youth Assessment Center as an alternative to prosecution and to prevent further delinquent activities. Case managers consider station adjustment charges, and police officers or school official recommendations, family input, and restorative justice methods. These include court diversion services, to restore the relationship between the juvenile offender, their victims, and the community, mediation, as well as peer court. Restorative justice is a theory of justice that emphasizes repairing the harm caused by criminal behavior. It is best accomplished through cooperative processes that include all stakeholders. This can lead to transformation of people, relationships, and communities. The Youth Assessment Center is funded by the Public Safety Funding, or the Quarter Cent Tax. Last week, the Racial Justice Task Force presented their report to the County Board during the Committee of the Whole. The task force must again be commended for their months of work, which is culminated into a report that contains 31 recommendations and steps that we as a community could work together to address racial disparities in Champaign County's justice system. The task force acknowledges and validates the restorative justice work and practices that have already been underway within the context of the county's juvenile justice system through the Youth Assessment Center operated by the Champaign County Regional Planning Commission. The report cites not only the number of youth that have been served by the YAC, as we call it, but the fact that evidence-based practices are being used to assess the youth and connect them with vital services throughout the county with the goal of diverting and preventing them from entering the juvenile justice system. Some of the services being provided consist of counseling, anger management, and there's a evidence-based program called Parenting with Love and Limits. We also do have them receive alcohol and drug treatment. The creation of the Youth Assessment Center was also rooted in the work done by the Champaign County Community Justice Task Force in 2013. One of the charges of the task force was to identify existing and potential programs and strategies for reducing the risk of Champaign County youths becoming juvenile or adult offenders. So the development of the YAC was therefore done in part by leveraging the Youth Court Diversion Program, at the time operated by the Regional Planning Commission. It is also our understanding that according to Illinois statute, law enforcement agencies are required to provide opportunities for formal station adjustments to juveniles in order to divert juveniles from the criminal justice system. For many years, Champaign County has used the quarter-cent sales tax funds to provide those opportunities in a uniform process for all Champaign County youth, most recently through the Youth Assessment Center. We are hopeful that the board will continue funding this diversion program. If not, all law enforcement departments within Champaign County will be required to create their own station adjustment programs in order to fulfill this statutory obligation. This will result in inconsistency for our youth in Champaign County and a considerable expense for our police agencies. More importantly, it is likely that youth who would have benefited from the community-based support provided by the YAC will end up in the criminal justice system. The cost on these youth, their families, and our community is incalculable. The following data was presented last week to the County Board during the Committee of the Whole, and I just want to highlight a few of the outcomes that were shared with you in a printed report that was provided. On an annual basis, since 2014, the YAC has received over 500 referrals annually. We have completed over 300 individual intakes on an annual basis and have supported over 300 youth and families annually to address behavioral issues, again, including acts of delinquency. 70% of the youth served at the YAC in FY 2017 have been males, and 30% have been female. 61% have been African American, 32% white, and 5% Hispanic. 92% of the youth served by the YAC in 2015 did not have juvenile court adjudication in 2016. 97% of the youth served by the YAC in 2016 have not had a juvenile court adjudication to date in 2017. 100% of youth with moderate high-risk assessment score have been provided service referrals. These numbers represent real young people who we are trying to impact every day at the Youth Assessment Center. And I want to leave you with a story, a real story, of a 15-year-old African-American male who was working with the YAC due to the fact that he had 2 police contacts. The story was provided to me by one of our caseworkers who worked with him. This young man's mother had given up on him. He was failing in most of his classes. He smoked marijuana constantly, and he hung out with friends who engaged in the same behavior as he did. This young man did not have a care in the world because he did not see a bright future for himself. He bounced from couch to couch. He was homeless. He was more worried about where he was going to stay that night than attending school. He turned to marijuana as a coping mechanism for all of his struggles. When he did community service at the YAC, staff would give him food because he was always hungry. They provided him with bus tokens because he would walk wherever he needed to go. He walked for miles just to make his peer court appointment. He was someone who needed close monitoring and constant reminders because his days were always different and unpredictable. Our staff provided him with guidance and support through the rough times without any judgment. They jointly made plans with him on how to get him back on track at school and to figure out where he could stay long-term and how he could become a role model for his friends. This young man is now working on bringing up his grades because he plans on applying for college after high school. He is preparing for the ACTs, and he has a stable living arrangement. The staff at the Youth Assessment Center have offered to help him with ACT preparations and to apply for financial aid in colleges. Like most of the youth that come to the YAC, his story is not unique. He is a young person who has had so much going on in his life, but with the guidance and support that he has received at the YAC, he is making progress toward his goals. We agree with the Racial Justice Task Force that the YAC is already playing a pivotal role toward restorative justice, particularly for our youth in Champaign County. What we need to do is to continue to build on what promises to become an exemplary and evidence-based model for diverting our youth from the justice system toward a path where they can become more productive citizens and role models to others in our community. Thank you. Take any questions?
Questions, comments for Mr. Go ahead.
I want to thank you for your presentation. I do want to mention that your statistics, while very impressive, don't even have a shadow of the true impact that it makes on our criminal justice system, our schools, and of course the families, and not to mention the person themselves and the impact that'll have in our community in the future that's unknown, but given an opportunity through your programs. To me, this is one of the real difficult choices we have to make as a board, where we can turn over an asset that's very negative to our ability to support this, being the nursing home, and support programs like these and the recommendations of the Criminal Justice Racial Task Force that have very important long-term benefits to our society and our community. Thank you again, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Further questions or comments? Ms. Furtado.
I believe we heard at one of our last meetings that your service is probably going to be dislocated by what's going on with the school. So have you, do you have an update on if you've been able to find another location? And then I also just wanted to say, your building is in my district, and I greatly appreciate the work that you do, and I'm very proud that you're located in my district.
Thank you. We are currently, and I will defer to Lisa Benson, but we are currently actively looking at space because I believe we're supposed to be out of there by March of next year. So we're working with various community partners to identify the appropriate space for us to move our services to.
We actually have a committee where we're viewing a few sites. We've identified a few. We actually wanted to see where things stand before we move forward and go ahead and tour those, and hope to have something in place. We hope probably at latest January.
Let's go with Mr. McGuire, then we'll come back to you, Mr. Marsh. Go ahead, Mr. McGuire.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation, Dilitz. Obviously, you did a much better job than I did last week, but it's very nice to have you here, all of you, and Mr. Westfield, who has come on board at the Youth Assessment Center, or YAC, I like that name, and appreciate having you there. There is some confusion. Right now, the Youth Assessment Center is in the current budget on file, so there isn't a cut to the program at this point. We'll have discussions of the budget later. Just I want to confirm that, right, Rick? So the people in public.
That's correct.
Okay. We'll discuss it obviously later if there's some determination about that. Obviously, I don't want to cut the program. I agree with you. I think it's a fantastic program for our community. So thank you.
Mr. Marsh.
Just one more quick question. What kind of space are you looking for? And we can maybe discuss offline that, but just generally, how much space are you looking for?
I'm bad with square footage, that's what I was asking. We're looking for around 4 offices, a common reception area, and I think square footage was around between 2,000 and 2,400. So I think that, absolutely. Thank you so much, Mr. Marsh.
Any other questions? Mrs. Petrie?
All along, we knew that the yak couldn't stay in that space, so having to move, actually, you got a year or two reprieve, if the truth be known here. My question actually is, with the funding you receive it from the county. The majority does come from the county, but there's also funding that comes from the Mental Health Board. What does that allow you for staffing in the way of counselors now?
So 66% of our funding is through the county board. We have four full-time equivalency. We have 3 case managers. One of those is part-time. And then Jonathan is also, he's a coordinator, but he also does direct service. So there's 4 staff. One of those is half-time that she commits to the Youth Assessment Center.
Mr. King?
So I agree. Thank you for the work that you all have done, and thanks for sharing. I'm going to ask a couple of questions, but I want to make sure you know I am certainly for the center, and I think would definitely support continuing to fund the center, but just questions that spring up from your presentation. First question, so 2013, I guess, is when the center sprung up. Would that be accurate? Nope.
I also wasn't here at that time, but I'll do my best. There was court diversion services being provided by the Regional Planning Commission. In 2013, there was an expansion with use of the quarter-cent sales tax to actually implement the Youth Assessment Center and I believe do county-wide station adjustments on behalf of all the law enforcement, and then also expand community-based services.
Okay, and I guess since that time, I know you mentioned 500 referrals. Is that more or less than the pre-2013 date?
I believe it's significantly more. We've averaged since 2014, on average 500. It's gone between probably 450 up to 600, but on average there's about a 500 every year.
Okay, and then I know you mentioned that you had about 300 intakes. So of the 500 that you receive, what happens to the other 200 that flow through the program?
So a number of youth are referred by the law enforcement, and sometimes they're not directly brought to the center, and so engagement is sometimes a difficult task. So attrition, in essence, and trying to engage them, and you can get 500 referrals, but actually engage 300.
Okay. Was there something else?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Is your microphone on?
Yes, now it is. So I'm going to help you out, Lisa, because I was here before.
Thank you.
Then. Okay, so what happened in 2013 was we had a building. So prior to that, the Regional Planning Commission was doing station adjustments. They had counselors who would go to the police departments and do the station adjustment monitoring at the police departments. And so the big change in 2013 was having an actual brick and mortar location for and creating the Youth Assessment Center as a space so that police agencies could bring the youth directly to that place rather than bringing them to the youth detention center, or so that literally people could walk in the door if they needed to. Again, to provide an alternative to bringing that kid to the criminal justice system directly. That was really the big change. And then along with that, making sure that that was available in a uniform fashion across the county, as opposed to each different police agency doing their own individual thing, some more significantly, some less, and taking that responsibility away from the police officers for having to know where to refer a kid to, having that center. So that was really the big difference in 2013.
I just have 2 more questions. Is that okay? Very good. So my next question from that was just going to be, when the center was created, or in 2013, when the funding was there, did that mean that the local police departments stopped funding those practices or processes, or did something change dramatically with what they were doing?
You want to address that one? Share the wealth.
So prior to 2013, departments did many of their station adjustments, and they did work with the existing program. And at that point, once it was established, more were taken directly there, and departments still provide support in that.
Okay. And then I guess my last question, it was sort of looking at the services that you all provide. I think you said counseling, evidence-based, a couple of different things. I didn't know if there was a particular model that you all had developed your program from, or was there a specific evidence-based variable that you all were looking at when you were trying to establish the program initially?
There was a tour, and I know the state started with an M, I don't want to say the wrong one, that guided, was it Minnesota? Thank you, that guided the development. So there were some ideas. It's very much an individualized program. We've actually had some other areas reach out to learn more about what we're doing. With regard to evidence-based, we use the Youth Assessment Screening Instrument, which is a YASI to screen all youth. And that helps us to determine what risk factors and all strengths and resiliencies that they have, and make referrals to build upon and address those needs.
Got it. And is that I don't know if you're familiar with the CU Fresh Start. Is that also the instrument that they're using?
It is not the same.
Okay. And then I guess my last question. So I think you mentioned 61% African American and 5% Latino. Or is there a particular reason, or do you all see any factors that are driving the 66% of students of color or kids of color that are part of the program? Are there other things maybe that you see are a direct relationship to why you would have 66% of the participants from the communities of color?
I think that's a deep question. Probably some of the answers to that question may be found in the report that's been released by the Racial Justice Task Force, as far as, how particularly youth, in this case, of color may be affected differently. But I don't believe we have been doing that kind of analysis on our own. But I would say that I think many of the questions you're asking regarding that may be found in that report.
Okay, thank you.
Let's go with Ms. Cruz.
I just had a question about funding. Do you receive any state grants that go into the Youth Assessment Center?
It's all local funding.
Okay. And would like the redeploy program through DHS, would that be something that would make sense? Because it looks like Champaign County would be eligible according to the criteria, and I didn't know if that's something, how that works for you.
Okay, I'll jump in again. So redeploy is a state funding opportunity. There's adult redeploy and juvenile redeploy funds that are available. They require an agreement, a cooperative agreement by a number of different entities in order to seek that funding. There's one particular entity that is not willing or interested in being involved in that, so it's not really something that's an option for us. Also, redeploy funds are generally more for the back end to keep kids out of the Juvenile Department of Corrections, whereas the Youth Assessment Center is really more of a front end, keeping kids out of the system in the first place. So I don't know if redeploy would be necessarily appropriate for us. It's something I would like to explore, but it's not really, I'm trying to be very correct about this. And I think, too, that our Youth Assessment Center is pretty unique. There really aren't other counties that have this kind of a program. We should be really proud that we fund this locally, that this is something that we provide, that we're creating. We're not really There are some other programs across the country that are like this, but it's a pretty new process. And so I think we're really on the cutting edge of this type of a system, and something that we hopefully will have other people coming and looking at us as a guide.
Okay. And then how does CCBYS go into? On. How does CCBYS play into any of this? It's the comprehensive youth-based intervention. Okay, yeah.
I actually used to work in that program
Okay.
once upon a time, so I'm familiar. It is one of our partners, so we do referrals. The crisis, when there's crisis and it is in their eligibility, we would contact them and work collaboratively, and we do.
Ms. Petrie.
Just to build on some of the history and to emphasize what Mr. McGuire commented, the previous boards wrestled very hard on funding the Youth Assessment Center from the 5% of the public safety sales tax. Originally, the previous boards chose to fund a number of different entities out of that small pot of money, and then decided that was not very effective and chose to pool it all together and direct it to the Youth Assessment Center. But at the beginning, it conduited through the Mental Health Board, and then the board decided that was an unnecessary step, so it goes directly to the Youth Assessment Center, and the whole amount goes. And over time, unfortunately, there's been a slight downward curve in the amount of money that comes to us, which we then channel to the Youth Assessment Center. So that emphasizes a bit of what Mr. McGuire said of the importance of the Youth Assessment Center and the historic background of getting to that full funding point.
Further questions, comments? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to approval of the minutes. I'll take an omnibus motion to approve the October 19th, 2017 Truth and Taxation Public Hearing and the October 19th, 2017 regular meeting minutes. Moved by Ms. Esri, second by Mr. McGuire. Discussion, Mr. Esri.
Yes, thank you, Chair Weibel. On page 72 of the October regular meeting minutes, the last line, Saucer shot. It mentions Brooks Marsh, Sasha Green. I can't speak right now. Clerk of the meeting swore in Brooks Marsh. It should be Mr. Chris Storr.
Thank you. That is a big mistake. Okay, any other corrections? Mr. Marsh.
In addition, I was mentioned there on 72, on 71, I was mentioned is not in attendance at the Truth and Taxation public hearing, which I was.
Okay.
So I wasn't sworn in, but I was at the Truth and Taxation meeting. And welcome again, Mr. Storr.
All right, thank you. Well, it does say Hartke and Marsh arrived after roll call, so it is there. Any other changes? Okay, all in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. Moving on, there's on facilities, was on consent agenda, ELUC. Mr. Esri, please.
Yes, thank you. I move adoption of resolution number 10160, granting a floodplain variance in zoning case 883-FV-17. I would also ask for a roll call to record the minimum of 12 affirmative votes.
Is there a second? Second by Mr. Goss. Discussion. Mr. Esri.
I'll just note that we do have Mr. Hall here should there be any technical questions, and I have some discussion points too if need be.
Thank you. Ms. Petrie.
Just for the record, the reason it is not on a consent agenda, I was the person who voted no at the ELUC meeting, and in particular, the second ordinance number 2, my concern is that this is using really our very best farmland for a building. Mr. Goss, please. It's a score of 100. There's not much farmland that has that score, so that's the reason for it being not on the consent agenda and my no vote.
Further discussion? Mr. Hall, I understand you want 12 votes. You need to know the 12 votes for certain. So we'll go with the roll call. Roll call vote, please.
Store?
Present.
Yes
You have to say yes or no.
Yes.
Summers? Tinsley?
Yes.
Anderson? Clemens? Cowart? Cruz? Esri?
Yes.
Furtado?
Yes.
Goss?
Yes.
Harper?
Yes.
Hartke?
Yes.
King?
Yes.
Marsh?
Yes.
McGuire? Michaels? Mitchell? Patterson? Petrie?
No.
Rector? Weibel?
Yes, motion carries. Mr. Ezra.
Thank you. I move adoption of ordinance number 994, amending zoning ordinance for a zoning map amendment on certain property, 884-AM-17, and I would again ask for a roll call for the minimum 12 affirmative votes.
Is there a second? Second by Mr. Harper. Discussion on this item. Seeing none, roll call.
Store?
Yes.
Summers? Tinsley?
Yes.
Anderson? Clemens? Cowart? Cruz? Esri?
Yes.
Furtado?
Yes.
Goss?
Yes.
Harper?
Yes.
Hartke?
Yes.
King?
Yes.
Marsh?
Yes.
McGuire? Michaels? Mitchell? Patterson? Petrie?
No.
Rector? Weibel?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Esri. Highway and Transportation was on consent agenda, so let's move on to Finance. Ms. Michaels.
Thank you, sir. I move adoption of resolution number 10163, authorizing payment of claims.
there a
Second by
second?
Ms. Cowart.
Second by Ms. Cowart. Thank you, Ms. Michaels.
That's right. It's your turn.
It's all right. I appreciate the help. A discussion on this item? See none, all in favor? All opposed? Motion carries.
Next up, adoption of resolution number 10164, authorizing purchases not following purchasing policy.
Is there a second? Second by Ms. Petrie. Discussion. See none, all in favor? All opposed? Motion carries.
And next up, adoption of resolution number 10165, authorizing budget amendment number 17-00041 from Fund Department 080 General Corp to 031 the Circuit Court, with an increased appropriations of $74,034 and no increase in revenue for funds needed to cover additional required expenditures which were listed in your packet.
Is there a second? Mr. Goss, we will need a roll call vote for this. Any discussion on this matter? Seeing none, roll call.
Store? Summers? Tinsley?
Yes.
Anderson? Clemens? Cowart? Cruz? Esri?
Yes.
Furtado? Goss?
Yes.
Harper?
Yes.
Hartke? King? Marsh?
Yes.
McGuire? Michaels? Mitchell? Patterson? Petrie?
Yes.
Rector? Weibel?
Yes, motion carries. Next up is policy person on appointments, Mr. Rector.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move adoption of resolution number 10167, authorizing employment agreement for interim county administrator.
There a second? Second by Ms. Petrie. I want to point out that the details of the agreement are in the yellow handout. And of course, it is an agreement that it will be hiring Ms. Deb Busey as the interim county administrator. Any questions or discussion on that item? See none. Oh, Mr. McGuire, sorry.
While I miss Rick, it'll be nice to have Deb back too.
Thank you for thank you for your expression of love, I guess. All in favor? Nope, sorry, Ms. Cowart.
I see we're talking about a term for December 17th to November 2018. Are we going to be actively looking for somebody to take that position?
There is no plan right now to do that, because on the end of November, the county executive would be in charge of the administrative unit. I mean, our plans could change, but that is our plan right now. She is just a part-time employee, or will be a part-time employee. Further discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
I move adoption of resolution 10184, designating the 2018 Champaign County Board calendar of meetings.
Second by Mr. Anderson. Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor?
I'm just double checking. You did say the calendar's been checked.
There's no conflicts with Jewish holidays. I will point out that I'm not Jewish, though. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Thank you, Mr. Director. We'll come back to you later on. Let's go back to new business, finance, Ms. Michaels.
Yes, sir. There are several items that we had pulled off of the committee of the whole meeting that we are now seeing, but we did have all the information in your packet, and these are roll call votes. First up, adoption of resolution number 10168, authorizing budget transfer 17-00006 from Fund Department 080 General Corp to 075 General County and 040 Sheriff for a total amount of $88,260 for retroactive wages due to the settlement of the FOP law enforcement and law enforcement sergeant's contract.
Second by Mr. Harper. Discussion. The contract, of course, will be voting on near the end of the meeting. Any discussion there? Seeing none, of roll call. Mr. Director, could you turn off your microphone, please? Thank you. Roll call.
Store. Yes. Summers. Yes. Tinsley.
Yes.
Anderson. Yes. Clemens. Yes. Cowart. Cruz. Yes. Esri.
Yes.
Furtado. Yes. Goss.
Yes.
Harper.
Yes.
Harkey.
Yes.
King.
Yes.
Marsh.
Yes.
McGuire. Yes. Michaels. Yes. Mitchell. Yes. Patterson. Petrie.
Yes.
Rector. Yes. Weibel.
Yes, motion carries.
Next up, adoption of resolution number 10169, authorizing budget amendment 17-00040 from Fund Department 679 Child Advocacy Center to 179 Child Advocacy Center with increased appropriations of $17,535 with a revenue of $17,535, making it budget neutral. The reason was to increase the spending of, right?
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm on the next page. The reason was to increase in spending authority for personnel expenses following the hiring of an MDT coordinator. Revenue for the increase to come from grants funded awarded for the fourth quarter county fiscal year 2017.
Second by Ms. Cowart. Discussion. Ms. Petrie, your microphone's on.
Oh, sorry.
Seeing none, roll call.
Store. Yes. Summers. Yes. Tinsley. Yes. Anderson. Yes. Clemens. Yes. Cowart. Yes. Cruz. Yes. Esri.
Yes.
Furtado. Yes. Goss.
Yes.
Harper.
Yes.
Harkey.
Yes.
King.
Yes.
Marsh.
Yes.
McGuire. Michaels. Yes. Mitchell. Yes. Patterson. Yes. Petrie.
Yes.
Rector. Yes. Weibel.
Yes, motion carries.
Next up, adoption of resolution number 10170, authorizing budget amendment 17-00042 from Fund Department 080 General Corp to 028 Information Technology with an increased appropriation and revenue of $1,600, making it revenue neutral. The reason is a reimbursement from the City of Urbana and Urbana Free Library for shared internet connection and additional expenditure authority for that revenue.
Second by Ms. Colbert. Thank you. Discussion.
Was it just because of an increase in the cost of the
Rick?
internet or service?
This was revenue that we were receiving.
Further discussion. Seeing none, roll call.
Store. Summers. Tinsley.
Yes.
Anderson. Clemmons. Cowart. Cruz. Esri.
Yes.
Furtado.
Yes.
Goss.
Yes.
Harper.
Yes.
Hartke.
Yes.
King. Marsh.
Yes.
McGuire. Michaels. Mitchell. Patterson. Petrie.
Yes.
Rector. Weibel.
Yes, motion carries.
Next up, adoption of resolution number 10171, authorizing budget amendment 17-00043 from Fund Department 080 General Corp to 023 the Recorder, with increased appropriations of $65,000 and increased revenue of $72,000. And the reason to cover increased revenue and reimbursement of the state rental housing support fee.
Second by Mr. Goss. Discussion. Mr. Storr, if you please, I have to call on you, and you need to use the microphone. Mr. Storr?
Thank you. Ms. Michaels, could you elaborate a little bit what that is?
I could, but I think Mr. Snyder would do a better job than I would.
This money is for revenue from recording fees that under statute gets dispersed back to the state for the, the Rentals Housing Support Program. So, but we actually got more in revenue than we had in expenditure that we were reimbursing. So this goes to subsidize certain kinds of housing.
Further discussion. Roll call, please.
Store. Summers. Tinsley. Anderson. Clemmons. Cowart. Cruz. Esri.
Yes.
Furtado.
Yes.
Goss.
Yes.
Harper.
Yes.
Hartke. King.
Yes.
Marsh. McGuire. Michaels. Mitchell. Patterson. Petrie.
Yes.
Rector. Weibel.
Yes, motion carries.
Next up, adoption of resolution number 10172, authorizing the amendment to aggregation program agreement between Champaign County and Illinois Power Marketing Company doing business as Homefield Energy.
Second by Mr. Esri. Discussion. Mr. Marsh, do you have a question?
Yes, it says that there's a 1 cent fee that's added. Is that new, and where does that money go to?
Rick, go ahead.
That's actually 1/10 of a cent, and that's actually for pursuant to the county board's direction to implement a civic contribution for the municipal electric aggregation program. So this program is voluntary, so people can opt out of it if they don't want to use it, but it provides an opportunity to buy 100% green energy at an attractive rate. And the new contract actually is going to reduce the numbers from our current rates, and it's also an extension for additional period. Ms. Ogden, is there anything that you want to add to this? You did an extensive amount of work on this contract, so.
As Mr. Snyder mentioned, this was one of the things that we had brought up during the budget process to help close the budget deficit that we were anticipating. When we reached out to the energy broker that we use, which is Good Energy, they indicated that they were in the process of negotiating with Homefield Energy, our current supplier, for an extension of our contract in conjunction with a reduction in our rate. So we were able to fold in our implementation of the civic contribution with a contract extension and rate reduction for customers. There will be a further rate reduction in June of 2019 as well. One thing I want to point out is that the county's current aggregation rate is below the utility rate. However, there were some other third-party supplier offers on the market that were more competitive than the county's rate. That was due to the capacity auction that occurred earlier this year. So that's one of the reasons that Good Energy was seeking to further reduce the county's rate. I did do a little bit of research to see what some other 100% green offers were, because when we're comparing rates, that's something that's difficult to do because the utility rate is not 100% green, and a lot of the third-party supplier rates that you will see are not 100% green. So in looking at some of the offers that are available that were 100% green, there was only one offer that I was able to find that was less than the county's municipal aggregation rate. All three of the offers that I found were for shorter term, and two of the three offers implemented a termination fee if the customer decided to exit the contract prior to the term date. One thing that Mr. Snyder mentioned is that this is an opt-out program, so customers can leave the program at any time without any financial penalty. Also, because we are changing the terms of the contract, there will be a required opt-out notice sent out to all eligible customers. So they'll have the opportunity to opt out of the program. Those who are currently in the program won't just automatically be re-enrolled under these new terms. They will be advised of the terms of the contract, and they have a 21-day opt-out period in order to let the supplier know that they no longer wish to participate.
Further questions? Mr. Marshall, I want to point out that is a new fee, just to clarify. Mr. King.
Yeah, so just for clarification, is our 100% renewable energy more, is it more, I guess, renewable, or is it green credit purchases, or can you all speak to what specific type of energy it is, I guess?
We'll try to answer your question.
I don't have that specific information with me. I know that when we went through this process initially, that was something that we had discussed. I'm happy to provide that to you, but there's not a change in the green energy that we are purchasing now versus when we initially enrolled in the contract. There's two other things I want to bring up. I did have the state's attorney's office look at this, and I just want to make sure that you're aware of these two issues that the state's attorney's office pointed out. One is that the county code does not directly authorize the charge or the civic contribution fee. However, Mr. Snyder and I have discussed this, and we feel as though the legislation, the intent of the legislature was to allow collection of this fee. Many municipalities and many counties collect this fee. And again, pointing out that this is an opt-out program, customers are able to opt out at any time. The other concern that the state's attorney's office mentioned was continued extension of a contract without going through the bidding process. The county, I believe, has gone through the bidding process 3 times. This doesn't really fall under our procurement policy because we're not really procuring anything for the county. This is something we're facilitating for customers that they are able to take advantage of or they don't have to take advantage of.
Further questions? Seeing none, all in favor? All opposed? Motion carries.
The next 2 items, sir, do require a roll call. Next up is the adoption of ordinance number 995, fiscal year 2018 annual budget and appropriation ordinance.
Is there a second? Second by Mr. Ezra. Discussion. Mr. McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to make some comments before we started the discussion and maybe get some clarifications. First, I wanted to say that obviously there's some financial issues that we're still all trying to work through, and we've had some discussions in the last week, apparently, where we've tried to understand each other a little bit more clearly and have had some positive conversations. Obviously, we've got some distance to go. Now we're going to talk about the budget we've got in front of us. And I want to thank Rick and Tammy for the work. We've kind of ran them around a little bit, I think. and the department heads for their work. And there's probably going to be more, obviously, as we work together to try to get the county in a better position. Right now, I would ask Rick to explain, because of some of the information went back and forth, and make sure that the public understands that there's only one budget on file, the B budget, and the documents you've sent to us and we've received discussing why we're doing the budget tonight with the levy, what changes, what if we try to make changes, what that might, how that might impact Tammy and changing the budget, and why that might be an issue. If you could do that, if I would ask that, that's okay.
I'd be happy to do that. First of all, before I start, I just want to thank so many of the board members who have met with us on an individual basis to go over the budget in great detail. I think it was a good opportunity, though, for especially some of the newer board members to have a chance to understand the structure of the budget and get a little bit more insight into county operations. So, and I'm going to repeat some of the comments I've made in my briefing memo to you all, so bear with me, please. One of the primary concerns I have right now is that I feel that it's very important, critically important, for the county to move forward with a budget out of this meeting. Previously, I'd mentioned something about state statute not requiring that we have an adopted budget in order to move forward with the levy. And while that is correct, after further discussions with the state's attorney's office, I've determined that there's a significant amount of jeopardy attached to that, and that there still is the possibility of a tax objection being filed, and that it might be very successful. That would derail the implementation of the levy. We have a very tight time frame to do that. Under the law, the county clerk has until the last Tuesday in December to certify the levy so that we can proceed with that for the coming year. Based on the amount of changes that we've talked about, I think it'd be pretty much impossible to get all that done in a timely manner. So I don't want to jeopardize the levy. The other thing is we've talked about is that the budget we currently have on file includes a balanced budget. It also includes the option B for the nursing home portion of the budget, which contemplates a potential sale of the home. I know that many of you are opposed to that, and we don't have a consensus on how we're going to move forward on that. But I want to tell you that I think that that is a relatively small issue, and that's not necessarily making the sale a foregone conclusion. And I'll tell you why. There are a lot of steps in the process of conducting a sale transaction that we haven't crossed through yet. Those are things that I believe the county board will be considering in the months going forward. Things like the RFP are one of those principally. The other thing is that I'm more concerned about some of the other issues that we have briefly discussed. We already considered at the Committee of the Whole the extension of the loans for the nursing home. Now that those are not either forgiven or extended, those are going to fall due upon the nursing home. That's going to increase the amount of obligations it has to the county, with no apparent ability to repay those right now. I'm also concerned about the lack of the tax anticipation warrant, how that could potentially impact both the demands on the nursing home's finances to repay IMRF and FICA, which it has not been able to do for a number of years as a part of its regular payroll. I'm also concerned about the continuing draw on general fund monies to pay for both payroll and accounts payable. As you know, we just drew another $100,000, which is the last amount remaining on the $500,000 that was made available to the nursing home this past week. And in fact, earlier today, we ran into an issue in that our payroll was larger than anticipated, and because of that, we didn't have sufficient monies to pay both payroll and AP this week. So we were forced to make some decisions. The auditor and treasurer have been monitoring this, and the auditor pulled some items off of the AP for this week's run so that we could maintain a reasonable fund balance.
So after this, we have about $19,000 in the fund balance for the nursing home after making payroll and AP. The remaining items I anticipate will be paid next week. We have one final check run each month on the last day of the month, and so we'll try to catch up with those. We anticipate Medicare and some other receipts coming in between now and then that would allow us to cover those. So, but as you can see, operating with the zero fund balance, as we've been doing, at least since I've been here, is pretty hard. You're constantly managing cash. I think that's a critical concern that the county board needs to be aware of and deal with at some point. So in terms of the budget, I'm not really as worried about adopting B versus A, other than the fact that if we were to do the option A budget, we still don't have a defined plan on how we would achieve the amount of subsidy that's proposed, which is the $1.4 million for FY18. And judging by the discussions I've had, I don't think we're going to reach consensus on that tonight or even in December if we were to continue the discussion. So as Ms. Ogden and I have stated from the beginning, we feel that because we don't have a crystal ball into next year, that it's very likely, no matter what budget is adopted, you will be making budget amendments, significant budget amendments next year. So with that, I think that it's more important at this point to secure the services and revenue for the county for FY18 that we move forward on the budget we have on file, which does pass muster. It has sufficient detail as required by the Illinois Counties Code as to revenue and expenditure items. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from board members? Discussion. Mr. King.
So just trying to be clear as well, like, so we've already, I guess, voted to take option B based, you know, I guess as a board, is that correct? And so we, yeah.
Yes, we have.
Okay, and essentially, I think the request for us was just to simply ask if there could be a 12-month budget that was produced. Is that how you understood it as well, or?
Are you talking about the motion made subsequent to the passage of that? Yes, we attempted to put together some ideas and options for the board to consider. We looked at different non-required items in the budget, such as funding for Youth Assessment Center, the funding for the replacement of the sheriff's radios, anything where there were some large amounts of dollars so that we would not have to implement staffing cuts. And we did not, or were not successful in doing that without requiring at least some level of layoffs of county general fund employees. So at this point, and not seeing that we're going to reach a consensus on what could be cut, I think it would be better for the county to move forward with the budget that was placed on file and then take up some of these issues later. I realize that there's a higher barrier for passing amendments to the budget once it's adopted, but I would also say that there are also high barriers for any of the decisions that are related to the nursing home potential sale or non-sale. So I don't see that as a problem because I don't think there's two-thirds majority on either of those issues right now.
Ms. Furtado?
I also, again, I know I've done this before. I want to thank Rick and Tammy for all the work that you've done on this. And I also want to say that I hear what you're saying. But I do want to express my deep concern over the idea of passing a 6-month budget for the nursing home. You know I've said this many times, and I've consistently voted against that idea, that I don't think passing a 6-month budget for any part of the county budget is a responsible precedent. Particularly, I am concerned that our collective failure, and I include myself in that failure, to fully conclude the conversations that we began on a 12-month budget, a budget that I still firmly believe would have reflected challenging but ultimately manageable cuts, is something we all are going to come to regret this summer. Cuts that could have been more spaced out and thus dulled over 12 months might very well be felt more sharply later this year. And I urge all of you, department heads and people who are going to be submitting expenditures, to turn a coin of phrase, keep your wallet in your pockets for the next 6 months. especially for big-ticket items. If there is something that you could wait on, please wait. As Jim and Rick expressed, there's still a lot of uncertainty, including, as we're going to talk about here in a little bit, a delay on our audit that might impact our general fund. So if you have big-ticket items in your budget, I strongly urge you to wait until some more detail of all of these issues are resolved. And as board members, I hope that we scrutinize expenditures that come before us very, very carefully before they are made. And that's all I had to say about that.
Mr. McGuire, did you have another comment or question?
Sure. I just wanted to maybe clarify a little bit, but there is no actual A budget to vote on tonight, and there has been no formal cuts that have been presented as a budget to currently vote on. So for this process tonight, as in part of the agenda, so we can't vote on those unless there are amendments to the budget that's on file.
Correct.
So
We are currently,
right.
the budget that's been on file for the last 30 days is the budget that's on the floor.
Okay, I just want to make sure of the process. Thank you.
Further discussion. Ms. Petrie.
I have a question for Ms. Ogden, not that I don't respect the comments of our county administrator. Ms. Ogden?
I apologize.
That's all right.
I was distracted.
Yeah, you too. Talking or no, seriously. You and I have talked about the fallout, if there are any changes to, suggested changes at this point in time for you to get those in a budget for us to act upon in the timely manner that we have to by statute. Am I understanding that correctly?
The county's financial system, as you know, is extremely antiquated. The budget process is very manual. It's done through Excel spreadsheets and Word documents. Every change that has to be made manually in the AS400, and then all of that information has to be ran by IT. And the budget summaries would have to be completely rewritten. So there is a substantial amount of work that would have to be done within the next month in order for the budget to be ready by January 1st of 2018.
May I have a follow-up? My follow-up then to you is, when you talk about this process, is that taking into consideration any rolling fallout that might be unexpected because we haven't had a chance to think through some of the potential changes that were discussed a week ago?
Could you rephrase exactly what it is you're wanting me to speak to?
So we discussed some things last Tuesday, and if people started making those changes, then they may not be clear-cut changes, just siloed changes. They may have fallout that are unexpected or that we haven't thought through, and that comes into this procedure that you just described to us, that you might have to come back and say, we changed A and B and G and H, and here's the fallout for it. Am I understanding correctly?
So there are a significant amount of transfers, I guess, that are inter-fund transfers, departmental transfers that would need to be facilitated. For instance, if we were to take out the mobile and portable radios, those are budgeted as a transfer from public safety sales tax to the general fund and the to capital asset replacement fund. There's just a lot of movement between funds that if there were changes that were to occur, that there is a potential that there could be, I guess, error or other repercussions that maybe weren't completely thought through.
Well, listening to our county treasurer last week and listening to our county auditor and reading our packet and our county administrator's suggestion and conversations I've had with Ms. Ogden, it doesn't make any logical sense at this point in time for us not to support this particular budget that's been put forward. But as I say that, there are other financial issues, and one of those financial issues is our conversation about the nursing home, and I certainly hope that we can continue that conversation after we take care of these two items.
Further questions? Mr. Summers.
More of a comment, really. I also want to thank Mr. Snyder and Ms. Ogden for all of their work in this process. I greatly appreciate all the time that they've dedicated to it, and it's been very helpful for me. I also want to add that I do concur really with all of Ms. Furtado's comments.
Further questions or comments? Seeing none, roll call.
Store. Summers. Tinsley.
No.
Anderson. Clemens. Coert. Cruz. Esri.
Yes.
Furtado. Goss.
Yes.
Harper.
Yes.
Hartke.
No.
King.
No.
Marsh.
Yes.
McGuire. Michaels. Mitchell. Patterson.
No.
Petrie.
Yes.
Rector. Weibel.
No. Motion carries. I got 13 to 8. Excellent. We have a budget. Ms. Michaels?
Yes, sir. Adoption of ordinance number 996, fiscal year 2018, annual tax levy ordinance of Champaign County, Illinois. And this needs a roll call, sir.
Second by Mr. Harper. Discussion. Roll call, please.
Store. Summers. Tinsley.
Yes.
Anderson. Clemens. Coert. Cruz. Esri.
Yes.
Furtado.
Yes.
Goss.
Yes.
Harper.
Yes.
Hartke.
Yes.
King. Marsh.
Yes.
McGuire. Michaels. Mitchell. Patterson. Petrie.
Yes.
Rector. Weibel.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Michaels. We have 3 more items. I'd like to have a motion to suspend the rule that the items have to go through the committees. These items did not. Moved by Mr. Esri, or second by Mr. Goss. Discussion, see none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Mr. Rector, would you move the first one, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move adoption of Resolution 10174, approving appointment of payroll accountant Leanne E. Robeck as authorized agent for IMRF for Champaign County.
Second by Mr. Anderson. I point out that the previous agent was Mr. Snyder, who is leaving us, sadly. Discussion. See none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Next item, Ms. Michaels, you want to do the next item?
Be happy to. Request for an extension to file Champaign County Circuit Clerk's audit report for the year ending December 31, 2016, with the Administrative Office of the Illinois Courts.
Is there a second? Second by Ms. Petrie. Discussion. See none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Why don't you do the next item, too?
Yes, sir. Adoption of resolution number 10173, approving agreement between the Champaign County Board, the Sheriff, and the Illinois Fraternal Order of the Police Corrections Division for January 1, 2017 through December 31 of 2019.
Second by Mr. Anderson. Discussion on this item. See none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. As you know, this is Rick's last meeting, so I want to thank Rick for all the hard work he's put in. I've been impressed by his work ethic and actually by his ability to come on board in a very short time and to run the county as well as he's done. So, Rick, thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
I'll make this brief, but I want to thank the county board, each and every one of you, for the support you've given me. I felt nothing but unwavering support since I've been here, regardless of whether we agreed on an issue or not. I've never felt that we couldn't at least try to work things through. This was an amazing experience for me, a short one, but I can't imagine doing anything that will eclipse this in my career, being the head of Champaign County government. So thank you for the opportunity. You really did take a chance on me, because I had never run a county before, and so so I thank you for doing that and giving me the opportunity to do that. There are so many great people in our employee pool. I could not possibly name all the folks that I owe many thanks to and my appreciation to, but there's one person I do want to mention, and that's Tammy Ogden, our Deputy County Administrator. I couldn't have been as successful as I've been without her continued hard work. And if you think that I have a good work ethic, you should see how many hours Tammy puts into this job. A real dedicated public servant. And so I thank you for everything you've done for this. So thank you all for the gift, and I look forward to continue working with all of you. I am a bit sad at leaving the county, of course, but I'm also excited to begin work in the village of Rantoul, and I hope to be able to make some contributions while I work there. So thank you.